out that we ain't scared no more. Seen so many things, so none's new to me. Believe so many dreams.
This is Kick-Ass Kyle Storm, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer. You like independent wrestling? You like women's wrestling? Hardcore? Shoot interviews? Check out Chop's videos. You'll love what you see.
What's up, guys? Teddy Goods here, and for all of you who are junkies of early 90s independent wrestling, especially from the New England area, I need to let you guys know about Chop's videos on YouTube. I am a subscriber, and I watch his videos frequently. Tons of NEWA stuff, Tony Rumble stuff, CWA, Primal Conflict, just all kinds of hidden gems. A few matches of myself early in my career, so check it out. Chop's videos on YouTube. Have a good one, guys.
This is the man they call Vega, and you can stay back, relax, and listen on to some of my career in professional wrestling. And remember to subscribe to Chops videos on YouTube. Hit the bell notification so that you don't miss other interviews. Y guste o no te guste, esa es la que hay.
Chopper here, chatting with Chopper. I'm here with Don Vega. How you doing, Don?
Hey, thanks, Chop, for having me on.
Oh, it's good to have you, the Punisher.
Great to be here, man. Great to be here. Holiday seasons are coming. You know, it's a good time to go back and share some memories.
Right. Guy that's been around and done it all. Great to have you on here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What is your first memory of pro wrestling?
My first memory of pro wrestling, it's, you know, I was born in Jersey. My parents relocated back to Puerto Rico when I was about 4 years old. My fond memories is watching wrestling with my grandfather. You know, my grandfather was a huge wrestling fan in Puerto Rico, and I started watching wrestling with him. And for me, my story, I fell in love with wrestling as a whole. You know, I don't have one particular match, one guy. It's just, you know, seeing all these guys doing what they were doing and larger than life, I just fell in love with wrestling. And ever since then, you know, that's all I ever wanted to strive for. You know, I always wanted to be a part of the business and become a wrestler eventually.
So you didn't really have a favorite. You just, anything wrestling you wanted to see.
Yeah, back then it's just, you know, once I started watching, I just fell in love with it. And I love wrestling, you know. Later down the line, obviously, you pick your favorites. But in the beginning, it was just, you know, if it was wrestling, I just wanted to see, like you said.
Would that have been like WWC? You probably seen it first, or was that like
Yeah,
WWF or something?
yeah, no, it was WWC back then. It was Capital Sports Promotion. It was called Caribbean Championship Wrestling. It was a mixture of things. Then later down the line, it became the World Wrestling Council, and yeah, that's what I used to watch. Guys like Carlos Colon and you know, a lot of the guys from the States like Terry Funk and Dory and, you know, Rick Martel, young Rick Martel. I mean, there was a mixture of guys like Eric Embreed and Eddie Gilbert. I mean, it was just a mix of who's from all territories.
Oh yeah, it was really hot down there for a while. Chicky Star down there at that time.
Chicky Star, you know, Miguel Perez Senior and Junior, Hurricane Castillo, Savio when he was TNT. I mean, there was so many guys that were good.
Many people don't remember Miguel Perez Senior was one of the hottest, even back in the WWF, one of the hottest tag teams there ever was.
And Rocco, yep. Definitely.
Yeah, him and Rocco, man, selling out Madison Square Garden like nobody's business. Nobody but Bruno was competing with that.
Yes, definitely.
I've brought that up to people, and they're like, "What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "No, you don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah,
because Rocco and Perez, boy, nobody was following them up.
They definitely need to go back and watch some of those matches and do some of that homework because those guys were hot. You know, they were definitely drawing and selling out New York.
The first tag team to ever do it, I think. The most sellouts, I'm not sure if it's the most overall or most consecutively, they hold the record. No other tag team was headlining and selling out Madison Square Garden like they were.
Yes, definitely. It's cool to, you know, go back and share those things with somebody that follows it to that level, because like you said, a lot of people you talk to about certain people and they don't even know who the guys are, and it's a shame, you know. It's a shame that the history is kind of like lingering.
Yeah, it's a shame. I'm big on this. I mean, I don't know it all. There's a lot I don't know, but when there's something I do know, I have to bring it up because you have to remember that. I'm big for
of course, man.
Remember this stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Drives me crazy nowadays when people throw around greatest of all time and goat like, oh, there's 46 goats. Like, no, greatest of all time is one guy. And you're not having the conversation without bringing, you know, Hackenschmidt and Gotch and Ed Lewis, all these guys into it because.
Yeah, you have to go back, man, where it all started from. You know what I mean?
And they're like, "Oh, that was too long ago." I'm like, "Of all time, what does that mean to you?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, all times. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So, how long did you live in Puerto Rico? To what age?
Puerto Rico from the age of 4. I moved back and forth a lot. I came back to the States around 6 years old, and I started watching the WWF at that time. And then I get into the favorites. You know, I started watching, obviously, Hulk Hogan, and he was larger than life. And, you know, I fell into that whole Hogamania thing, and, you know, the whole gimmicks with like Warrior and all these larger than life characters. But Hogan was my guy once I moved back to the States. Obviously, you know, talking to my grandpa, I always used to still get the word from Puerto Rico and we would talk wrestling, you know, as a little kid. So I knew both. And then obviously, you know, seeing a lot of guys down there that later on I saw here when I moved, you know, it just, I've seen this guy before, you know, like Rick Martel, like I mentioned, Dory, Terry Funk, Harley Race, young Barry Windham wrestled out there. So a lot of those guys already were familiar to me once I got to see them again down here in the States.
You mentioned Harley Race. Harley Race was such a badass, man. Most people don't know that, didn't see him till he come to the WWF when he was towards the end of his run and he was just collecting that paycheck for retirement. Yeah, man, he was such a badass, tough man.
Yes, yeah.
Did you see the Bushwhackers when they were down there? They were some crazy.
Yeah, the Bushwhackers were the sheep burgers, Los Pastores in Spanish, and they had some bloodbaths down there, you know, barbed wire matches. ring surrounded by fire. I mean, you name it. Down there was ECW before there was ECW. You know what I mean? It was like wild, crazy matches, bloody matches.
Exactly. That was the first time I ever seen barbed wire. Was in the old Aftermags, seeing them and Carlos Colon. I had never seen Carlos Colon wrestle, but I used to be, into the magazines. That's the only way you could follow when I was a kid. And man, this Carlos Colon was the craziest dude I ever seen. That's all I know. His head with Abdul the Butcher and everybody.
Yes. It's funny you bring
I'd
that
never
up.
seen barbed wire.
I used to collect those magazines. Sometimes I don't know if it was the Wrestler magazine that had those full-blown color pictures. And I used to get like the bloody photos and take them out and put them in my room and stuff like that. I would get pictures of Carlos Flair all bloody, blonde hair all bloody. I mean, those are my memories of wrestling back then.
But you're right, and especially them old. They used to do them anniversary shows, right? And like the '87, I think, was a really good one with Wyndham and all them. 88, 86, like around then, man, there wasn't nothing like them. You put them in, it was all guys from up here, but like top tier guys, man.
Yeah, top tier
people
guys,
up here wouldn't even believe what the cards were.
Yeah, it's funny that a lot of people now obviously they know about WWF and them WWE running the big football stadiums, but in Puerto Rico they were running major league stadiums, drawing 40, 50,000 people on these events, and not only in the anniversary shows, but on a weekly basis, they will go to the Coliseums and jam-pack, like turnways. I think Carlos, in mentioning 80, maybe 85, I'm not sure if it was 84, 85, he did three of the major towns down there, sellouts, and he did it the style they did WrestleMania 2, where he had 4 matches shown on the screen and 4 live ones. So they did it that style down there, and I remember you can look it up. There was 3 sellouts in every place, including the Major League Stadium in Bayamon, which is a huge major league. I think I at this point I think the Montreal team goes there for the summer still. Wow,
that's why it cracks me up when people are like, wrestling was dead. Like Vince made wrestling and Hogan made wrestling. There was no wrestling. There was like they watch the old clips of like studio wrestling on TV, like Memphis and stuff, and they think that's the crowd. They don't realize they didn't televise the big cards. The big cards are on the during the weekdays.
You have to buy a ticket. Yeah, they wanted you to buy that ticket. Yeah.
You try to explain to them, no, like even World Class, like I was saying, was drawing 40,000 people with that Flair fight or whatever.
Yes.
Before WrestleMania 1,
Yes. Yeah. All these places were drawing huge crowds, and people were just need to go back and do a little homework and look for some old footage, and they're gonna find a lot of things they didn't know about pro wrestling and events and draws,
Right. I laugh all the time, like people online, not that I get into it too much, but I laugh at them. And they'll be like, you don't know, you need to go learn. And I'll just laugh like, no, you need to go learn. How about Bill Watson, the Dome shows? Go look up Bill Watson, the Dome shows, what he was drawing, before Vince in 83 or whatever, It's no, there was no wrestling before Hulkamania. It's like it was dying. It was about to close its doors. Like, wrestling was fine before Hulkamania. It just made one company big. That's all it did. It didn't make wrestling as a whole was bigger before WWF, because you had 100 places drawing 5,000 people.
Big house. Yeah. You could go to different territory, and every territory was drawing a good house. In comparison, now it's only one spot or two now with AEW. But yeah, you're right, man. Wrestling was hot, and it was hot in every territory. They had their guys that would draw a crowd,
Even if they were only drawing 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, 1,000 people, there was 100, 150 places doing that. So add up the number of crowd. Never mind the TV, how many people are watching. You ever look up the numbers for Memphis? Like they did like 15 years. The numbers there are astronomical. Like 98% of the people in Memphis watch on Saturday mornings for like 10, 12 years straight or something. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that from like listening to like Jim Cornette and stuff like that. He gets detailed numbers and stuff like that. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane.
It definitely.
It's like nothing today is touching it, and people are like, "Oh, wrestling's hot now." It's like it ain't. This ain't hot. This is
yeah. And like I said, a lot of. I mean, the guys now are definitely great athletes. They're incredible, but the market now for wrestling, in my opinion, is more of a television show, especially the WWE. They're not marketing wrestling; they're marketing infomercial, a television show that has characters that do wrestling to sell their conflicts. That's all that is, It's
sell
a
a T-shirt, sell a mug, sell a doll.
So, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not the wrestling I grew up loving. The hard hitting. You believe these guys were gonna go at it, and you wanted to go this thing.
Well, that's why I think you need an opposite. You know what I mean? Like, and nobody does different. Everybody says they're gonna, but they don't. They just do a different version of what Vince is doing. Like AEW said they're gonna be different. They're a little different, but they're basically the same thing, just a different version of it. They're him 10 years ago. They're WCW.
At that stage, it's hard because those guys, you want to make money, so you become, again, what we said, you become an infomercial to sell your merch and to sell your guys and all that stuff. And it's hard going against the grain once you're at that level.
Right. I just wish Vince would take and what he should do is make his own territories and just say, like, here's ECW for Paul. Here's your budget per month. Here's Cornette with SNW. He can make his own little thing and then have WWE champ, the world champ, have them all have their own champ, and his champ go in and defend against their champs, have their own little TV show, have their own little champs, let them book it. If they get their own sponsors and shit, because they can do that. Yeah. And if they start flunking, rip them out and throw a new booker in there. Here's your budget. You get this much. What can you do? Prove yourself.
Yeah, make it work. Make it work.
And you have 10 territories. Then you got a farm system, plus the people that book and do good in office, rip them up into the WWE as they do better. You got a farm system for everything.
Yeah, I thought they would do that eventually. A little while back, I thought they would get into that. I thought it was a big mistake not letting Paul kind of take ECW when it came back, because it had that feel. They did great. I enjoyed. That's one of my favorite pay-per-views, actually. That return of ECW there, the first one, and they buried it. They just wanted to bring the old guys back to create new guys and bury the original product, which was a mistake in my opinion. ECW could have been what NXT was when it was hot, that way back then. So
but he owns everything. I mean, he's finally sold OVW, but he had OVW. He's got FCW. He's got Deep South. He owns the AWA. He owns World Class. He owns Georgia.
He's got everything. I think Carlos sold some of his encyclopedia videos to rented it. I don't know, but they haven't put it on the network. Yeah, I guess Peacock now. But a while back, I heard he did rent it out his library to Vince.
I mean, I don't mean like the split. I mean legit territory. Like, here's your budget.
Oh yeah.
You're working under me, but you're separate. You're running it. And if you do shitty, you get fired, and I bring in another booker.
Yeah,
like a territory.
Another guy,
All right. So anyway, let's get back to you. This is supposed to be about you, huh? I do this all the time. You're talking wrestling.
We're talking wrestling, man. It's
right. No, it's all good
to me.
I'm good. I'm talking wrestling. You get work as the old timers, the only guys I can talk this kind of wrestling with. I can't talk this with anybody else. Some guy that's just getting in the business. I start talking to like, who are you talking about? Holly who?
Yeah, I get that all the time, man.
That don't make sense. I don't get that. Why don't you just do a flip and the crowd will pop right away if I do a flip? Why do I go through all that? Because you got to build up the crowd, and then you get a bigger pop at the end. It lasts longer. It stays with you.
Yeah. You gotta make the people care for you, not your moves,
Right. You don't use it all up right away, and then you get nothing to do after, It's, never mind. I'll go over there and sit in the corner. So what was your first interest in maybe becoming a wrestler? When did you first start thinking about that, like getting in the business?
So once I moved to Rhode Island, I was probably around 11 years old when I moved to Rhode Island, and I had moved again in one of my go-rounds to PR. And the closest thing I had to wrestling that I also was a fan of was boxing. And boxing was hot at that time with, like, you know, Tyson and even some of the middleweights that were coming up that were hot at that time. And I started doing amateur boxing. So when I came here, I continue on to do that. And sitting in my house one time, I was flipping through channels and I came across the NEWA, New England Wrestling Alliance, and I saw this young, skinny, annoying kid cutting a promo. His name was Gorgeous Gino Giovanni, and I was hooked, man. I was like, oh shit, wrestling, you know. I'm gonna continue to watch this. I just kept on flipping through channels and finding them, and I found all their programs and stuff like that. And one day I saw they were based out of Rhode Island. And I'm like, I gotta find these guys. By then I was probably like 14 years old. And finally did. I found their office. They were in Cranston, Rhode Island. And I started going to the place until one day it was open. And I walked in there. I met Rocco De La Sandro, little short Italian guy. He's like, dude, you want to be a wrestler? I'm like, yeah, I want to be a wrestler. And there, that was the first time I met Anthony. Anthony Rufo was there at the office, and Tiny and Jason, the midgets. But anyways, you know, long story short, I met Rocco. He said I was too young. He couldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. I continue harassing them, going to shows and, you know, looking. Then I started looking into more, and I found out that Knuckles Nelson had a place in Johnston, Rhode Island, like a school. So I went there. He told me the same thing. You're too young. You know, come back when you're like 17, 18 years old, and we'll talk. Found out about Walter. Took the ride there with my dad. Same thing, Walter. Come back when you're 18. And even Johnny Rods. Same thing. So after trying all these places, I just continued to harass Rocco. And finally, after probably a couple months, he gave in. He's like, all right, dude, come in, help with the ring. We got a school in this spot. You can come, you can train, but you're not going to wrestle. You're just going to train. And that's how it started.
Who was leading the training at that time?
At that time, the first guy to ever offer to work with me was Anthony. Anthony, from that first time I walked into the office, he took a liking to me and my father, and he was like, "I'll train kid. I'll work with the kid." You know, a lot of the other guys kind of like, this kid, you know, tell him to leave, whatever. But at that time, it was Anthony. Another guy that was there at the school was Jose Perez, and Ray Roy, because Ray was training Pierre the Mountie. Ray Roy was training at Kowalski, so he would come back and teach some of the guys. So those were the guys that were there when I first started.
Cool. I've talked to both of them guys. Both of them guys said good things about, you know, that you were cool, that they liked you.
No, all right, man. That's cool. Cool. That's always a plus, you know.
Oh yeah, Karizma did. You know, he said you're his boy. Everybody said good things. Nobody said bad things about anybody yet.
That's good, man. I like all those guys. Yeah, Kevin Karizma, hell of a person. One of the coolest dudes, you know, that you would meet. Definitely, one of the good guys.
So, any stories or memories from that training? How long did you train there, and anything happened during training?
So NEWA, I trained there for about, I would say, 3 months, and then they lost the school that they were in, and it became wrestling. And back then, you know, shows used to run consistently. Like every week there were shows. There wasn't so many promotions like now that you go someplace, they got 10 promotions. There was only a unique group. So yeah, I used to train after those 3 months of training at the school. I used to train before shows. And again, I was working with like Ray Roy and Anthony and Jose whenever he could. And eventually I realized that I needed to get out of there and go somewhere else to train because I really wanted to do this. And I was still too young. I mean, the first go around I had there was my first match in NEWA happened a few months after training. I wrestled the midgets. The midgets used to wrestle this other kid by the name of Eric Kulas. And Eric didn't show for one night, and they put me in his spot, and I ended up wrestling the midgets. And then from there on, another dude that I, God rest his soul, that took a liking to me and helped me out was Reverend Link, Dave Jackson. And Dave said, kid, get yourself some shades, a black jacket. You gotta be my bodyguard. He just wanted me to feel welcome and to give me something to do. And he added me to this group he had back then, the Faces of Fear, like El Diablo, which was Jose Perez, Prettyboy Hernandez. Forgot the other one. I think it was Liwai Dev Padula, the other one. He was doing the Arabian gimmick there. But yeah, that was my group. A little while after, I knew I needed to get out of there and get better training. So I asked Prettyboy about Yankee Pro Wrestling. And those guys were going to Massachusetts and talking about these bigger shows. And they were talking about they're doing these shows getting paid. And I was just keeping my mouth shut and listening to all this. And I'm like, this is why I need to go, And I asked Prettyboy, and he's like, yeah, man, I'll bring you up one of these days. And he did, he brought me up. I saw the show. It was day and night, when I watched that. Because my first show that I went, it was at the PAL in Fall River. It was packed house, probably like 400 plus. And, there was guys still there around that time. I think one of the main events was Scott Taylor wrestling somebody. So, it was day and night. I'm like, these guys, some of them are self-taught in NEWA. And, I come here, these guys are like looking like the shit I see on television, So I definitely had to get in there. And I remember that I watched the show. I didn't talk to Joe Eugenio, which was the promoter at the time, because I was intimidated. And I left. I went outside to meet Prettyboy. And he asked me, hey, Punda, you talked to Eugenio? I'm like, nah, man, I don't think. He's like, get your ass back in there and talk to the guy. And the rest is history. Joe agreed that if my father signed a waiver, he would let me start training at his school. And I started training at Yankee Pro.
I just did an interview with Prettyboy a couple weeks ago, probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And he said he wants to do one of these with all the independents.
Yes.
With all four of you guys together, like sitting at a table.
Yes, that would be cool, man.
And Karizma said he wants to do it too. So Jose's the puzzle piece.
Yeah, that definitely be cool catching back up with those guys and sharing some of these memories and stuff,
That's what I said. Everybody said Jose would be the tough one because he's usually busy and running around,
Yeah. Get your ass in the game, Jose Perez. You can find some time. Let's do it.
You mentioned Eric Kulas. Any memories or stories or anything you'd like to say about Eric Kulas?
Eric was, youngin' like me. I think he was like 16, 17 at the time. He was like 1 or 2 years older than I was. And at that time when I first came into the NEWA, like I said, he was already doing stuff with the midgets. I think he had about probably 6-7 months into doing stuff, training and doing like shows. But Eric was always cool to me, man. I got to interact with him and his father, and I remember the night that incident happened to him. I was actually gonna go to that show and check it out, one in Revere for ECW. And then last minute, my father decided we wasn't going. But yeah, my actions with Eric, it's the typical teenager interactions. To me, he just seemed like a kid that was living his dream and got his head a little bit bigger at times, and it happens. But he was always cool to me.
What about Tiny? What was your first opinion or earlier memories of meeting Tiny?
Tiny was always cool to me too. You know, it was later down the line once I started getting on the road and doing shows, and me and him became tight. That, you know, he would get me booked on shows, and I would give him rides to shows, and then, you know, he would try to scheme off your pay at shows, but going back, you know, we had some good times, and you know, I actually seen him not too long ago at this random spot show that I went to, and it was cool catching up with him, and you know, we've always been cool, me and him.
I actually talked to him the other day. I texted him to be on the Primal thing, and he texted me back. He's like, "You better have some money for me. You want me to talk?"
I was just gonna ask, did he try to get a payday off of you?
And then I was real nice. I texted him back. I'm like, you know, I'm not getting no money for this stuff. This is costing me money. I'm just doing this to, you know, explain to him why I'm doing it. I'm like, hope you're doing well, Tiny, blah, blah, blah. I was like real nice to him. And then he texted me back, I don't know none of them people, because I was like, you know, Jose is going to be in it. Padula is going to be in it. I listed some people. He's like, I don't know none of them.
Yeah.
And he's like, Hail New Jack or something, he said. I said, yeah, R.I.P. New Jack, whatever. And 2 days later, he called me.
He wants to do it now?
Yeah, well, I guess he talked to Shiki, BG, his buddy there. And Shiki
MGB,
told him I was cool. So now he's like, oh, I didn't know you were cool. Now I know you're cool. I'll talk to you.
All right. Yeah, he's a trip, man. We have definitely some roast stories with him, you know, and his brother and my other buddy that I brought in to work with them at one point, Little Killer. Yeah, we definitely have some stories there with all those guys.
So who would you consider your trainer? Would you consider them your early trainers, and then what Yankee Pro, your actual trainers?
Early trainer, Anthony Rufo. You know, like I said, Perez used to help me out. You know, first couple of bumps I ever took, he was the one that was helping me out, and Ray those times of NEWA. Moving on to Yankee Pro Wrestling. In the beginning, I was training with Tex McCoy. I don't know if you know him. Tex McCoy was working with me for a few months, and then I started working with Mike Baker, Brickhouse, and Brickhouse was my trainer there. And I also used to, after training with Brickhouse for over a year, you know, I did Sunday trainings with Dave Souza, Sabana Souza. So those were the people that you know, trained. It's a mixture. I can't say just one, but you know, those first few months, Tex, and then from there on, Mike Baker, and then, you know, Souza, and just working shows. We used to work 3-4 shows a week at times for Yankee Pro. You know, we were working consistently there, so you know, got to work at your trade a lot. It's not like now you work one or two shows a month or whatever if you're lucky.
Right. You get broken in a lot quicker that way, working, you know, the more you work.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And it was a lot of guys that were, you know, a lot bigger, a lot tougher, you know, guys like Big Rick Fuller, and, you know, guys that will really give it to you. And a lot of these guys now, you know, I tell them all the time, you know, I help train a lot of young guys now. I tell them, you know, if you were to get some of the beatings that I got by these guys, you know, if you think this is rough, you would have definitely quit back then. We used to train on a freezer box, you know, in New Bedford. So, you know, the coldest it could ever be in the winter and the hottest in the summer.
I went to high school with Big Rick.
Okay, yep. So you know, when he was about 350, you know, if he hit you, you was gonna be feeling it for the rest of the week.
Yeah, I don't know him that well, but I've seen enough of his matches, and I've, you know, stood next to him. I know how big he is. I wouldn't want to take that chop.
And he was a Wednesday night guy. Like we used to, when I was training over there, Wednesday nights Ricky would come in, and this is when he was like getting his his teeth get cut for TV for WCW at the time, and he would come and grab us. He's like, "Come here, kid," and he would try something, and he would do this. And one time he booted me. My nose was freaking like, but I enjoyed it because I got to learn, and I got to work with different people, and that helped me along the way to the extent that I could work with anybody, and I took advantage of it. I was never scared to get in the ring with a particular guy. I enjoyed it so much. I just want to be in there.